you like haunts?
Yes.
Do you like immersive theater?
Yes.
Do you like escape rooms?
Yes.
What's the safe word?
My haunt life. Hello and welcome to the My Haunt Life podcast. I'm Mike.
And I'm Russell.
And haunt season's over.
Yeah, pretty much.
That went by so quick.
It did. It
It's
was
kind of nuts.
very fast season.
But during those last couple of weeks, we definitely tried to pack in as much as we can.
Mm-hmm.
That's what she said. So you went to one of our favorite things.
You're referring to Rotten Apple 907?
Yeah.
So, yeah, this year's theme was called The Portal. It was an interesting year. I know Rotten Apple, a lot of people in the haunt community know they've had a rough year. A lot of their sets and prop stuff that they had in storage was actually damaged in a flood earlier this year. So they were making up time, and they had lost a lot of stuff that they normally put into their haunt. However, Mike, that was not apparent in any way, shape, or form. Rotten Apple is known for how beautiful they are, how intricate, how detailed their designs are. The rooms are beautifully, beautifully crafted. And Mike, this was absolutely, definitely up to par with what they normally would do.
Awesome. No, I had heard rumors that this might be their last year. Did you hear about that or get that sense?
The only time I've ever heard about that was in conjunction with, we lost Boney Island this year, and because they had lost so much in the flood, I think that was a rumor thing.
Okay.
But I did not hear, I've not heard anything about that being, true with Rotten Apple. Their facade was sort of a dilapidated shack in the woods kind of vibe, Mike, and it was beautiful.
Nice.
And inside, you kind of wandered through a forest motif. You met a couple of witch-like characters who were doing various incantations, etc. And again, this is just a home haunt with a lot of love behind it. Beautiful design. I'm glad I made it out. I literally drove over there and got in line before I had some other stuff to do that night. So again, Rotten Apple, keep your eye on them. They are worth going to every year. The trick with Rotten Apple is get there early because the lines build up.
Mm-hmm. And they will cut the line probably like an hour after they open or so.
Yeah, because it gets that long.
Yeah, and people have lined up hours beforehand. So if it's something you want to do and say I think the hours are like 7 to 10 or 7 to 11, don't get there at like 9:30 and think you're just going to walk in. The line will be cut at that point. So remember that for next year.
And yeah, it's normally 7 to 10, and they actually they're starting to put that on their flyers and on all their material of line may be closed earlier. If you want more information on Rotten Apple 907, always a really great, dependable home haunt in the Burbank, California area, look up rottenapple907.com on the web. On Facebook, do a search for Rotten Apple 907, and on Twitter, you can find them as Rotten Apple 907.
And just because we have to wait another year for them to open their haunt, definitely check out their site and their Twitter and Facebook, because throughout the year, the Myers, who are the family behind Rotten Apple, they usually do some things throughout the year. Like they do, they teach classes and whatnot. And I know they've been at Midsummer Scream and Scare LA before, so keep an eye on that and keep up to date with what they're doing. So one of the other things you did that I couldn't join you with is because I have a job and I couldn't get out at 2 p.m. to go to a haunt.
Which I managed to do.
Which just sounds weird. Like, yeah, I'm going to a haunt at 2 in the afternoon.
It was a little odd, to be totally honest. It was, and when we get into the technical side of this, it did have an effect on my experience, which somebody else had mentioned to me in advance, and it affected my experience as well going in midday. It's something which I think that they will correct in the future. I went and saw Into the Black, which was out in Pomona, California. So it was about an hour drive for me, Mike, in the middle of the day. And Into the Black, we interviewed Larry Bones from Boneyard Effects, several podcasts ago.
March. Yeah, because it was that spook show.
That's correct. It was at Spook Show. And Into the Black was a creative endeavor where they tried to tackle a whole bunch of stuff. They made a short film kind of an introductory short horror film, which introduces the story and the mythology of their haunt. Actually, on site, there is a VR experience that you could have paid for a separate ticket. And then the haunt itself, which you could buy a ticket to that. And the haunt itself, Mike, you entered alone. You went through it all by yourself, which, is appealing to me because I get scared easily.
No, not you.
Yeah, I do. So breaking this down a little bit, I chose not to watch the online film at Midsummer Scream. They showed it there. I wanted to wait until closer to the haunt season, and I did. The online film I think it's under 20 minutes long, if I remember correctly. It's basically an intro to the mythology of the Black House, hence Into the Black.
I was going to make a joke about the presidency and where he lives, but I won't.
Okay. Do you want to do that?
Well, no, because I mean, there's a Impractical Jokers episode where they have people try to sign a petition to turn the White House into the Black House because it's been racist far too long, and it's funny.
Okay. All right.
Never mind.
Okay.
Go on. A little
Crickets.
glimpse into what I watch on TV.
So the online film itself, I have to say, Mike, I think as a horror film, it is, I hate to say cliche, but yeah, it is. It's the characters are sort of cookie cutter characters that you would expect to find in a horror film. Research group from a college follows a professor into the woods. You have the camera gear cynical guy. You have the girl with the crush on the professor. You have the ambitious professor who is so ambitious he ignores the feelings of everyone around him. You've seen these characters before. It is a bit on the nose and heavy-handed as far as the performance goes of the characters. However, it does its job. It sets up the mythology of the Black House. So when you go to the actual event in Pomona, you can go to the VR experience, which is also a little bit more of a glimpse into that house. The VR experience, Mike, for me was enjoyable. It's because you introduced me to PlayStation 4 VR. It's not that level of quality. It's grainier. It's less detailed. However, the thing that they do, which is really fun, is you and I both had VR experiences where they mess with the environment around you during the VR experience.
No, that was in was it Insidious?
Yes, Insidious did that. So they had fun. Let's just say I could tell that there were things going on around me as I was seated in the chair watching the VR experience. And there might have been things that I felt and things changing in the environment around me, which added to the VR experience. And I found it quite fun. There's a couple of jump scares. There are some really creepy images in the VR experience that focused on like darkness coming and overtaking a room that you were in, things like that. Also some creepy doll moments and some creepy little girl moments in the VR experience. And then you went from the VR experience into the haunt itself. So literally the film that's online, Mike, the haunt you step into is what's in the movie.
Oh, cool.
So if you watch the online movie right before you go to the haunt, you literally are stepping into the house they find in the movie.
And they don't play that there? You have to watch it beforehand?
I don't know if it was an option there. It's on YouTube, and that's where I watched it before I drove out. So the haunt itself, since you go in alone, I had a blast. It's beautifully decorated, obviously with Boneyard Effects having a good reputation with their work in the effects industry. It absolutely delivers on the look, the feel, the vibe. You enter this creepy house and you walk through long corridors and creatures jump out at you. Demon type characters move around you in the dark. And here's the thing, Mike, overall, it's called Into the Black. As I moved through this haunt, the rooms got darker and darker and darker. So by the time that I was at the end of the haunt, I was almost in complete pitch black rooms.
Cool.
So it really does add to the effectiveness and the creepiness. The one downfall is of going at 2:00 in the afternoon. They had a light leak from the front of the building, which the first couple of rooms I entered, the light leak actually affected the rooms. So hopefully that's something that they would be able to correct, when they bring the haunt back. And as far as I can tell, it is their intention to bring the haunt back next year. I spoke with Larry Bones after I went through, and he would like to go farther into this mythology of the Black family and the house that disappears, and that nobody can find it, nobody knows where it is hidden in the woods, and you have stumbled upon it, and you are going through to investigate. Now, as far as the scares go, great jump scares, some of them hidden in furniture, in walls, around corners, like really effective jump scares. I walked into rooms a couple of times and you think you know where the scare is coming from, and they did a very good job of hitting you from an unexpected direction. And I will say this, that I am an easy get with jump scares, Mike. There were times when he's smirking at me right now. There were times when the demons in this...
Your head?
I always bring them wherever I go. The demons in the haunt chased me actually at an almost full-out run.
Oh, wow.
So the haunt is big enough that they could actually do that, and it was really effective. And there were a couple of times when you know this... I'm sure you've heard me say this. Like there was one time in particular when I thought I had outrun the demon, and I turn around and he's standing right next to me. It was really effective, and my first was like, "Oh, really? Come on!" And so I continued to run around the furniture that was in that particular room. They had a good time with me. They really did, because they obviously could tell that I was enjoying the being scared part, and I was genuinely scared. So I hope Into the Black comes back and does explore this mythology. I wish they were in a different area than the Pomona Fairplex, because there was nothing else around them, which I think...
So it's basically, you have to plan one night.
It was a destination for
it.
me, and
Yeah.
which, because I ended up with that day off of work, that's why I went in the middle of the afternoon. So I wouldn't be dealing with rush hour traffic, etc.
So it makes me wonder, so if they're open, and earlier I joked, it was like, oh, at 2 p.m, but you literally went at 2 p.m.
Yes, I did.
So it makes me wonder if it's the same amount of actors inside on a 2 o'clock on a Thursday versus a Saturday night at 8.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, and I don't expect you to, but it's just one of those things like, where, since you go through alone, where would the better time to go be?
I will say I encountered a fair number of demons during this thing. So I did not feel like the cast was sparse in any way.
Oh, good.
And also, some of the rooms were absolutely beautiful. There was one room in particular centered around a Ouija board that was beautiful. And the hallways were very dark and creepy. They do have what I jokingly refer to as horror film hallways, which I don't know. We've never really talked about this, Mike, but do you know what I mean by horror film hallways?
I'm assuming, but why don't you explain it?
It's the hallway that you would never find in a real house.
Oh, yeah.
And the question is, Mike, how many times have you been in a house with a hallway that has absolutely no doors in it?
I can't think of any.
Yeah, and so that was the one thing, is there were a couple of times when I realized, like, wait, this isn't a hallway that I would find in a real house. This is a maze. And this is not a criticism against Into the Black. The production design, the decoration, everything was beautiful, but I always find it humorous when I'm in a haunt and I turn a corner and there's a hallway with no doors, because hallways always have doors. So it makes it immediately feel like a maze to me. It's just one of my glitchy things that I always register when I step into a haunt. But I had a blast at this, and I hope they bring it back. I hope they have a different location, something where there's more around to do. So this is not just the only destination, and I hope this mythology continues. They have a beautiful mythology about this house where the Black family disappears, and the house disappears, and no one can find the house. So that's what you're going into, is the house has been discovered, and you're going in after this investigative team that found the house. So, and they all died gruesome deaths, of course.
Of course.
So
Well, I'm really glad to hear it was such a positive experience for you, because I unfortunately didn't get to make it out to Into the Black, but the majority of things that I heard from people, and this is probably the only thing I heard from people before you went, was I want to do the VR and the haunt, but I don't even know how to buy tickets because the website's weird and it has two different times and you
Though,
can't line up and stuff like that.
yeah, I think I mentioned that on an earlier podcast before haunt season. The website was not user intuitive. However, if you did read in the fine print, and I don't know if this was in the website originally or if they got feedback that made them add this, there was a suggestion of, we suggest you book the VR experience and then 1 hour later book your haunt experience. And I chose to book it 45 minutes later because I figured at 2 o'clock in the afternoon they probably weren't going to be very crowded.
And you're a rebel.
So yes, I am. You know that about me. So the experience for me was good. I know that they had some fire marshal problems on their opening weekend and, things that haunts have to deal with. So I am glad I went out to Pomona to have this experience, and I enjoyed it. And I really am curious to see if this mythology can continue, because I think it's a good setup for a haunt. I really do. I had a good time at this, and I love the going through alone, and the demons had a good time chasing me and harassing me. And this was not a full contact haunt. This was, they did not touch me, but they had a very, very good time.
Awesome. For more information on Into the Black, you can go to intotheblack.biz, on Facebook, Into the Black 2018, Instagram, Into the Black 2018, and on Twitter, Into_the Black.
Now, Mike, after I went to that, I did something which we have both heard of, and I don't think you've ever done, and this was my first time.
Really? You're just going to lob that softball over to me like that?
Okay.
Just keep going.
All right. The Los Angeles Live Steamers Railroad Museum Ghost Train.
Say that again faster.
No. Also known as the LA Ghost Train. The LA Ghost Train is a family-friendly event which has been going on for about 15 years, apparently. They were dark last year, I believe, but they have come back. This is definitely family-friendly. It is creepy and spooky, so younger kids might not fare well. This is at a place called Travel Town, right near Griffith Park, and literally what they do is there's a miniature railroad museum there with tracks, with trains that go around the tracks, and you can actually ride. It's sort of a miniature train, and you sit down as if you're sitting on a small bench. And, you have footrests on the side of the train, and they ride you through a park.
Can you please rephrase that? Because that's not how you're supposed to say that. Especially if it's family friendly.
Wow. You sit on a train, they drive the train through a park.
How about you take a ride on a train?
All right, fine, we'll do that. You take a ride on a train through a park.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I just wish you were having this conversation in public and not just us two on the podcast where there were other people around.
Okay.
You're like, yeah, I went to the park. They ride you around.
So, and for a very long time, by the way.
Oh, just dig that hole.
So, Mike, somebody who came to me, and we were having a conversation about haunts, and they mentioned, since you and I are both big fans of Mabel's 6 Feet Under in Anaheim, they said, have you ever done the Ghost Train? And I said, no, I've never been able to fit it into the schedule. They said if we liked Mabel's, we would probably like the Ghost Train, because it's sort of the same ilk of just done from a place of love, done from affection. It's not too far away from the Los Angeles Haunted Hayride, but there's nothing immediately nearby it because Travel Town is the railroad museum area. So this literally is, you hop on a miniature train and they drive you through miniature towns they have decorated with jack-o'-lanterns and creepy figures, and there are huge dark sections where you're going through the trees and there's things in the trees, and it's just spooky and creepy, but not to the point of being extremely gory and not to the point of being too terribly frightening.
Are there actors or is it just set decorations?
For the most part, it's just sets. It's like the conductors are kind of in character. The conductor I had was really hamming it up a little bit, which was great. And it's pretty family friendly, and it's just so charming, Mike. I really want you to do this next year because
Okay.
I think you would enjoy it the same way that we enjoy Mabel's in Anaheim. It's just obviously done from love. There's a lot of volunteers who work on this and make it a possibility to happen. So, it's a fundraiser for the Railroad Museum, and it's. I've heard people talk about this and how fun it is, and I just didn't get it until I actually did it, Mike.
And how long is the ride?
Oh, it's 15 to 20 minutes, I believe.
Okay.
So it's you. They definitely take you all around Travel Town, which is a small part of the Griffith Park area. Yeah, and it's you go through all kinds of different decorations, and I had a really really fun time. Definitely recommend this. And if you have kids that like the creepy stuff but can't handle extremely scary, this is a good intro. This is really, really good stuff. If you'd like to learn more about the Ghost Train, you can go to the Los Angeles Railroad Museum site at lals.org. And if you go to their events tab, you can click on that and it will give you a link for the Ghost Train. I'm sure they will update that before the next haunt season. Also, you can find images from past Ghost Train years. And on Facebook, you can go to LA Ghost Train, all one word.
So another thing that you did was a home haunt that you got to see at Midsummer Scream.
Yeah, it was very, very different than what we saw at Midsummer Scream. It's called the Opechee Haunt, designed by a young man named Sam. And in the past, apparently, it has been a traditional walkthrough haunt. And what he did at Midsummer Scream last year was a really enjoyable walkthrough. And what he did this year at his home haunt is completely unique. Haven't seen anybody do anything quite like this. He had a soundtrack which he animated faces on pumpkins and timed lighting effects and fog effects and sound effects to create a Halloween variety show in his front yard.
That's awesome.
It was really cool. And again, family friendly. And so what would happen is this would happen in rotation. I think the show was, around 15 minutes long, if I remember correctly. I did it in the middle of several other things. And I showed up just as it was beginning, and I stood there with 8 or 10 other people. We watched the show. There's 2 pumpkins hosting the show, sort of a like a comedy duo of pumpkins.
Like us.
So you're the scary jack-o'-lantern.
Okay.
I'm the goofy jack-o'-lantern, probably.
Yeah. You're the misshapen pumpkin that fell.
Thank you.
Well, I was thinking of Friday the 13th and like Tumor Jason. It's like if that was a pumpkin.
Okay.
No, sorry, never mind. Like I'm not calling you like Tumor Jason, but for some reason I was thinking about that and I was thinking of pumpkins, and then I thought it would be funny if we combine those, and that would be you, and never mind. Anyway, so yeah,
there's a whole different podcast happening in Mike's head.
There's a whole different life happening in my head.
This is probably true. But the Opechee Haunt was really, really fun. It's North Pasadena area. And like I said, he normally does a walkthrough haunt. And next year, I talked very briefly to Sam between the shows, and he was setting up for the next one. And I believe next year he may go back to a walkthrough haunt. This was sort of an experiment on his part. I think he really succeeded. It was really fun, family friendly. And Opechee is someone that has been recommended to us. And this is the first chance I think either of us had a chance to get out there, and thoroughly enjoyed what I saw, man. And again, I'm going to say this repeatedly, just from a place of affection for Halloween and a love for the spooky stuff. And this was fun, spooky stuff.
Awesome.
If you'd like to learn more about the Opechee Haunt, look up spookyscary.wixsite.com/Opechee Haunt.
We'll have the link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, we will. Okay. And on Instagram, look up Opechee Haunt, and on Twitter, Opechee Haunt, and Opechee is spelled Opechee Haunt.
Speaking of that other podcast in my head, like
Yes.
now I'm thinking of a parody of Naughty by Nature's OPP.
Oh, please.
You down with Opechee? Yeah, you scare me. You down with Opechee? Yeah, you scare me. Yep. This will be our last episode of My Hall Life.
Okay, that got me. I am chuckling. I am chuckling. All right. And so, Mike, from there, I drove directly over to back actually closer to my home, another home haunt. This was I did for the first time, and I tried to do them last year, and timing worked against me. Spooky Hollow's Legends of the Swamp in Van Nuys. Now, Mike, this is one of those where I wish you had been there because it had one of those just like you stepped through an area and it sort of unveiled itself. And I just had this moment of like, oh man, this is so cool. And it's called Spooky Hollow's Legends of the Swamp. They actually create a swamp
That's so cool.
with a footbridge and with a water that you like the water that you have to cross over the footbridge, and there's fog machines going, and it's creepy and dark, and they have.
I hope they didn't get fined for the city because of the whole drought and water restriction thing.
So not sure. There was water in a couple of rooms of this haunt. The vibe of this was so cool. It really did feel like you were stepping into a real swamp. And Mike, they had little crocodiles snapping in the water. And it was one of those things where that's so cool and that's so cute.
It's the little things like that that add so much to an experience.
Oh, it was as soon as I saw one kind of snap its jaws, I was like, "Oh my god, it's awesome! That's so awesome!"
Because they could totally just have had the cool like atmosphere, and it's like, oh my god, this is really cool. But they take it to that next level.
Oh
and
yeah,
have
the
snapping jaws.
Yeah, at the exterior of the house up front, you sort of walked through a cemetery area. There were several other rooms. You met a couple of characters along the way. Again, just a really, really nice, solid home haunt out in Van Nuys. Last year I tried to go and I got there too early, and it was when I think I was meeting you the same night. I didn't have time to wait for them to open. So I'm so glad I made it this year. Really enjoyable. Just, yeah, a great atmosphere in this one. And I will say they use an effect, which is an effect that I know you're very, very fond of. It involves fog.
Oh, I thought you were going to say cattle prods.
Oh. No, it's a home haunt.
Exactly.
If you'd like more information on Spooky Hollows, you can look them up at spookyhollows.com. And on Facebook, do a search for Spooky Hollows.
So the next two home haunts we finally were able to sync back up and head to on Halloween, actually. And I feel like we can replay last year's podcast with us discussing this and have it being played now, and it will be the same thing, because my main points from last year was, wow, I'm so impressed of what they did from the year before. And this year, both the Klownhouse and the Haunted Shack, same thing. They blew me away this year, and where they were last year versus where they were this year, they keep upping the ante, and it's
both of them.
mind-blowing to me. We first hit up the Klownhouse, and you've heard us speak about the Klownhouse a few times because when we were talking about Book of Fee, Dawson, who's behind the Klownhouse, won one of the contests. And if he used that money for this haunt, you can tell, because wow. Like, I mean, walking through, he added so much imagination to this and so many different techniques for things like walls and there is the thing. So there are some things he had last year, like there were drop panels and whatnot, but he had a vortex this year, and just seeing what he was able to do and come up with the different scares, you can tell he's learning so much, like really, really fast. There was an actual maze.
Yeah, I was going to go there if you didn't. Yeah,
and it was good.
It was clever above
Yeah.
everything else. How you got through the maze and how you discovered the pathway through the maze. And it's really funny because rarely have I seen you get stumped. And there was a couple moments where all of us got stumped of like, I have no idea where to go now.
Yeah, and it was awesome.
Yeah, it was very clever. It was very cleverly done, and some really good jump scares, including a couple of round the corner type jump scares, which definitely were extremely effective. The clown house motif, the clowns work. They just really do.
And another thing were the actors, because in previous years we mentioned that it was his son and his son's friends. Well, every year they get older and wiser. So this year there was a lot less of little kid actors and more actors, if that makes sense. Like I never got what I got last year as in a rah, where it's like that's how little kids think they can scare you. It was more of like almost like it was like professional. Like I did not get that at all. It was very mood and tone and proximity based scares instead of the easy rah.
Yeah, and I will say that at one point in the middle of Klownhouse, you were ahead of me, and I was sort of the last person in the group. And I know that there was a jump scare for you guys, and when I rounded the corner, that actor didn't try to get me with a jump scare. All he did was he stood completely immobile, and his head moved, following me as I moved through the room.
Which is almost creepier.
That was so effective.
Yeah.
It was so simple, but and again, I think that speaks to what you were saying about these scares are getting more intelligent. I did not see Klownhouse 2 years ago. I know you did, but the improvement from last year I thought was just light years. Like really, I really enjoyed this, particularly the maze, and definitely the characters were effective.
Yeah, and it's a shame that it's only open a couple nights, but I understand. But this is getting to be on par with all the other ones that we talk about that are amazing,
Yes.
like Rotten Apple and Backwoods and stuff. Like this there.
Yeah.
Even like last year when the ringmaster was letting people in, it was a pullover mask, and this year I couldn't tell if it was a mask or if it was prosthetics. Like it was just everything. The ante was up with this one.
Definitely. Thoroughly enjoyed the Klownhouse.
And for more information on the Klownhouse, and it's Klownhouse with a K, go to theklownhouse.com, on Facebook, The Klownhouse, on Instagram and Twitter, also The Klownhouse. And a couple miles away is another home haunt that is just top notch. And again, this year blew me away. And that's the Haunted Shack. And both of these are in Torrance. Russell, last year, the big thing we were super excited about at the Haunted Shack was they had 2 paths.
Yes.
And I believe they had 2 paths this year as well, but we only got to see one.
Well, in the middle, we sort of split at one point in the middle of the haunt. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's more than 2. I don't know. But there was a couple really big things here that they did that just my jaw was on the floor. One of them was the bed.
Yes.
And the other was the walkway.
Yeah, the bed was amazing, and it's because they may use the effect next year, so I don't want to get too spoilery.
Yeah, exactly.
But you walked into a bedroom. There were a couple of characters in the bedroom, but the exit from the bedroom was hidden from you. Mm-hmm. And the way they revealed that and the creepiness of the characters before it was clear as to how you were going to get out of this situation, so effective.
Like, seeing stuff like this makes me glad I stopped doing a haunt, because there's no way I could be at this level, and I would just get mad at myself because I wasn't there. Like, no,
you can't say that to me, because I know I have heard some of your creative ideas, and I know you could be at that level.
Oh, idea-wise, I can blow any of them away. It's the actual doing that's my problem. But seriously, like, I mean, what you witness in people's backyards,
right,
and driveways and front yards,
and both with the Klownhouse and the Haunted Shack, particularly in the Klownhouse, I was surprised at how big the footprint of the maze was. Really, it was like I was surprised. I was not expecting to spend as much time in the Klownhouse, and the Haunted Shack is the same way. It's so much bigger than you ever think it will be.
Oh yeah, and these rival like professional haunts at this point.
Yes.
And I mean, it's unfortunate Big Worm Sherwood Scare isn't around. It's been dark for the past few years, but same thing. It's just like I would rather pay like that money to go see these haunts than a Universal, and because I mean, granted, they don't have Universal's money, so maybe the props aren't as perfect, but the ingenuity and the love, it's there because Universal, you're just walking through. It's like, oh, cool. There's a Shining prop. Awesome. Ooh.
Yeah, I especially this year, I heard Universal was disappointing to a lot of people this year, and I was not disappointed with any of the home haunts I went to. That's for sure.
Yeah. So this is turning into a PSA to go to home haunts, I guess. But seriously, it's like we can't stress this enough. And it's tough because some of them, because they're home haunts, people have jobs and kids and they want to enjoy Halloween. So a lot of times they're only open on maybe the Saturday before Halloween and Halloween.
Right. Only a few nights.
But places like Backwoods and Rotten Apple, they're open almost maybe like 3 weekends prior to Halloween. So definitely make sure you check out home haunts next year, seriously, because you will be amazed, and they keep getting better, and it blows my mind. For more information on the Haunted Shack, go to thehauntedShack.com, on Facebook The Haunted Shack, and on Twitter The Haunted Shack. So after all the home haunts, Russell, you went to see one of our friends, Zombie Joe.
Yes, I actually went and saw a production which has been running Wednesday nights. It started during the haunt season, and I will say that it ends November 15th, though, so there is a chance to catch the show called Deviled at Zombie Joe's Underground Theater. Now, we've talked about Urban Death on this show. We've talked about other shows like Blood Alley Christmas or Blood Alley, and this, Mike, is a format similar to those shows in the fact that it is vignettes or scenes, usually with, lights will dim, lights will come up, and another scene will begin. However, the difference in Deviled is it's more, I think, thematically, I was about to say cohesive, but that's not the right word. It's more thematically straightforward. There's less variety here, and I do not mean that as a criticism. There's a tone about Deviled which is extremely consistent from beginning to end. It's very dark. It's very creepy. It is very, very sensual in many ways from beginning to end. There is some nudity in this show. Most of the cast is either naked or nearly naked, and there are some very adult themes and images explored during the course of this show.
So maybe it's not really called Deviled and it's Deviled.
You go with that. Go ahead. I will say that this has a very powerful female energy about the show. There is a lot of the imagery centers on the worship of a female form or a particular female character. There's a very tribal feel to this. And there are moments of gentleness and there are moments of power. Most of those are centered on the female characters. However, the male characters are extremely important in this ensemble because they help create this tribal, sometimes animalistic vibe that the whole cast just exudes. So I really, really enjoyed this. And I will say this, Mike, there were 2 sequences in this show that rival some of my favorite things, my favorite moments I've ever seen at Zombie Joe's.
Oh, awesome.
One in particular is, again, since it's still running, I don't want to give too much away, but a man punishing himself and then becomes almost a sacrificial lamb for the need to be given to someone. And the performance, the imagery of that and how it is drawn out and executed was really powerful for me, and it really hit me hard. It was, and to be totally honest, I'm not exactly sure why that particular moment, but the way that scene developed was just perfectly paced and perfectly executed for me. And since this is, again, not going to give a specific spoiler, since this is very female centric, I think in many ways, they do explore the power that women have that men will never have, and that is the power to create life. And the way they deal with the creation of life is, oh man, darkly comic, but also truly disturbing. So I really, really enjoyed Deviled. I really did. I think the cast is excellent for this. The whole vibe of the show, the whole tribal feel, the whole really gritty, dirty feel of this show worked for me really, really well. I thoroughly enjoyed this show.
That's so rad. And you went while Urban Death Tours of Terror was still happening. So was all the plastic gone from the maze?
Oh, plastic from the maze. Yes.
Oh, that's got to be a pain to set up and take down.
I think ooh, wow. Was Urban Death still running? Well, yeah, during the haunt season, they started during, wow, you're right. That would have been a pain to set that maze up and tear it down. Yeah, they use the lobby in a very different manner.
Interesting.
I will leave it at that. And I witnessed someone who was utterly terrified of the idea of immersive theater, and they had heard about other Zombie Joe shows, I think, Brave the Dark or whatever, and they were very, very nervous, and Zombie Joe actually said, "Go ask that guy." And so I kind of consulted with someone like, what are they going to do to me? And I was like, seriously, trust me, you'll be fine. And they were fine. This is not an immersive show. This is not a show where the actors can touch you. You will move around a little bit during the show for reasons of space, but this is not an interactive show. I really, really liked this entry in the Zombie Joe year, that's for sure. For more information on Zombie Joes, you can look up zombiejoes.com, on Facebook, ZJU Theater, and on Instagram, Zombie Joes, and on Twitter, Zombie Joes.
And then you went back to Creep.
Yes, Creep and the Lore show, which they have been doing in conjunction with the Amazon Prime series for the podcast Lore. The reason I went back is we talked about this on the podcast. I had sort of a clunky show the first time I went, but I really liked the atmosphere and the world that they had created, and I'm glad I went back because, Mike, my second experience was so much better than my first experience.
Oh, good.
I think they found a better flow and groove through the course of the run, and I'm really glad I gave that show a second chance because I really wasn't satisfied with my first time through, and it was worth going back, and I got different scenes than the first time that I went through.
That's what I was going to ask you, if you were able to get different things happening to you.
Yeah, I saw a different angle of some of the medical stuff, and I got a different story in one of the group scenes where they kind of peel you off and you get different stories. I got a different story this time. So yeah, and there was definitely better flow. It really, really worked nicely this time. I'm really glad I gave Lore another chance.
That's awesome. It makes me wonder, though, because this really has nothing to do with Halloween. So it makes me wonder if this is something that could run year round or be extended, because the podcast and a TV series, sure, it makes sense during Halloween because it's dark and creepy, but it's not a horror thing, really. I mean, it's horror, but it's not gory. It's not scary to, I think, a lot of people. It's more creepy.
Right.
So I think this is something that could possibly keep running.
I would love to see that, and I agree with you. And it's funny, I went to a dinner recently with a large group of people, and somebody there was lamenting that they had not been scared during the entire haunt season, and they were griping and they were complaining and they were really, really being annoying. about how much they hated everything. And, I said, well, what have you seen? And they brought up lore. They brought up the Creep LA show. And I said, what did you not enjoy about that? It was like, nobody jump scared me. Nobody leaped out at me. Nobody screamed at me. Like,
It's not that
it
type
wasn't
of show.
scary. And I literally said, I just said exactly what you just said. I said, it's not that type of show. And their response was, but it's the haunt season. It should be a haunt. So they were upset that it wasn't the type of show they went in expecting or wanted.
They don't understand how marketing works.
So, and here's the thing, like nothing in their marketing says jump scare. Nothing in their marketing says haunt.
Yeah, I think it says like an experience based on the TV series and podcast lore.
Exactly. And so I was very surprised by that attitude. That person didn't seem to like anything.
And Russell, you're a fan of the Lore podcast, right?
Yes, I am.
All right, hold on. What are you looking at me like that for? I have a present.
It usually freaks me out when you say hold on, because something usually What?
It's a print signed by Aaron Menke from Lore.
What? What? That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's it. You're giving this to me?
No,
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. That is so beautiful. Wow. I am just like I'm blown away. It's beautiful. It's people in a cemetery attending a funeral and in the rain. And signed by Aaron Menke. Wow, man, dude.
Mao Man?
Wow, man. I'm tongue-tied. Wow. That's very kind of you, sir. That's very cool. Yeah, wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's very cool.
So since you're tongue-tied, I'll take this part.
Go
for
for
more
it.
information on Creep LA and Lore, the apparently not haunt, go to creepla.com, Facebook Creep Los Angeles, Instagram and Twitter Creep Los Angeles.
And speaking of immersive theater, I went and saw the latest from Shine On Collective called Sweet Dreams. And this was sort of a follow-up, Mike, to something that they had, and a story they introduced at the Fringe Festival earlier this year. They also took it to San Diego.
And then Midsummer Scream.
Yeah, and in Midsummer Scream, there was a little bit more added to the chapter. This was a mixed bag for me, to be totally honest. They had a beautiful location. There was a house near downtown Los Angeles, which they performed the show at, and you moved through the garden, you moved in and out of the house. They utilized the space really, really well. Story-wise, there was some really fascinating stuff going on here, Mike. The story was you showed up and you entered a dream state. They actually gave you a sedative. Not really. Like, wait. Wow, no, Shine On wouldn't do that. Shine On treats their patrons well. That came out sounding wrong. You had the chance to enter a dream state at the beginning of the show, and you were informed that in this dream there was someone lost, perhaps a princess, and you met a prince who explained that he had been searching for the girl of his dreams. So what you needed to be is you needed to be a hero to come into the dream world and make the ending of "and they all lived happily ever after" come true.
Really?
Yes.
But it's haunt season. It should be a haunt.
Well,
I'm just kidding. I don't mean it like that, but that seems like an odd thing to do during October.
it had its dark elements, definitely. It as the show progresses, you get some really interesting elements about the wow. I'm like fumbling at how to express some of what was put before me. The princess may not want to be found. She may be his girl of his dreams, but he may not be the guy of her dreams. So you have that going on. You learn a little bit about the family of people involved in this story. You don't know if the prince, to be quite honest, deserves her or has earned the right to stand by her side. All of these are questions that kind of get unraveled during the course of the show. And during the course of the show, there's other things. I absolutely really enjoyed a sequence where someone brought up the darkness of certain fairy tales. For example, there is, the version of Sleeping Beauty where she bears children while still asleep, and things like that. And there's a darkness to these fairy tales that can be found.
That seems like it would be an easy pregnancy, though.
You can write Mike at myhauntlife.com with all those protest emails.
I'm just being an optimist. I mean, I've never given birth. I can't because I'm male. But from all the things I see about women giving birth, there's screaming and, so if you're asleep and you sleep through it, I mean, granted, you won't have that, like, oh my God, this is my child, but you don't get the pain.
I was not thinking about that. Okay, valid point, perhaps.
No, perhaps it is.
Okay, all right, valid point. And there's some darkness. There are things in the dreams wanting the princess to not wake up, perhaps. So all of this is explored through an immersive theater piece as you're wandering around this house, meeting various characters. And I got derailed there for a second by what you were saying. There's a fascinating sequence when they were talking about the darkness, and they compared the mythology of the sleeping princess to Lazarus, or the resurrection of Christ, which I know is a bit of a weird leap to make, but it is one of those Christian themes that some people point to sometimes, concerning the sacrifice of the female for the male. It's one of those weird mythology things that I really am not interested in exploring. But the fact that they brought it up in the way they did in the show and as part of the dialogue, I thought was utterly fascinating. For me, the show didn't quite work 100% for a simple story reason. And the story reason for me was that I felt I hadn't spent enough time with the prince at the beginning of the story, Mike.
It's the story of your life.
Wow. So you're feeling ornery today? What's going on with you? So I didn't necessarily feel like I trusted him that he warranted the happy ending. Wow. I totally walked into that.
Wow. You're talking about me today?
All right, so the happily ever after. So it became a little uneven because then you go and you meet Rose, who is the girl who's supposedly lost in the stream, and it I don't know, there was something about that didn't somehow gel for me. But it had all of the things about Shine On Collective, which I've enjoyed in the past, of odd interpretation of dance moments or dance sequences to interpret story points. Everything about Shine On that I enjoy was present, but for some reason it just didn't quite gel in this show. However, I will say that I enjoyed this show more than the last show from Shine On that we saw, which was In the Wild?
Mm-hmm. Into the Wild? In the Wild.
So I enjoyed this more than that, but still I think Shine On is one of those groups that they're doing something nobody else in this town is doing. Their stuff has a completely unique feel to it. The way they use movement, the way they use dance, everything from pantomime to, spying on each other the way we did. At one point we were looking through windows of the house, spying on other scenes that were going on. There's some fascinating stuff going on. It just story-wise didn't quite gel for me this time. But still, Shine On is a company that I really, really like their experimentation. So I definitely recommend following Shine On, and it's just that this particular show didn't speak to me. But I think it's just the story that didn't speak to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think they did a good job, just didn't really call my name somehow.
That's because apparently she was asleep.
Yes, she was.
So she couldn't call your name.
Right.
She was bearing children.
I did particularly like the ending of the show.
The happy ending?
Well, melancholy ending. So the idea where the patrons actually come forward and actually by reading passages address some of the fairy tale endings and variations on what that might be. I thought that was really interesting. There's definitely interesting stuff here. It just didn't call to me personally, but really like Shine On what they're doing and how they're experimenting. Nobody else in town. Literally, I can honestly say, Mike, at this point, because I've been through several other shows now, Shine On is developing a style that is very distinctly Shine On Collective.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's like it's yeah, and this this
Which
I think reinforced that.
Which is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're not cookie cutter. Like they don't go to a show and be like, "Oh my God, I really like this show." So that's everything that we're gonna do. Like every
Right.
show that I've seen from them has been pretty different.
No,
But it's like in the same style.
there's some very fascinating stuff going on. Absolutely. So keep an eye on Shine On Collective. You can find them at shineoncollective.com. On Facebook, search the Shine On Collective. For Instagram, Shine On Collective. And on Twitter, Shine On Shows.
So Russell, it's not very often where we see a show, enjoy the show so much, but as soon as the show ends, be like, "What the hell did I just see?"
Yeah.
And that happened this past week with Caught, which is happening at the Think Tank Gallery. And I feel like there's really not much we can say because of how it takes place. Anything that we talk about would kind of ruin it for that person going to see it for the first time.
I totally agree with you. However, I will say I loved this evening.
I did too. But again, what the hell did we see? We know what we saw,
Right.
but what the hell did we see? Like this was such a mind mash of storytelling.
Yeah. And I guess you would consider this to have 4 acts to it, probably. And it is inspired by dissident art, which references an art district in China that is maybe a puppet of the government, maybe not a puppet of the government. However, that's not really what this evening is. Caught is a show where you enter, you witness some beautiful artwork, and you meet an artist who talks about the journey of how this art collective began. That is literally almost all we can say other than this. This show is sort of like, you know what it's like? It's like a Russian doll, the wooden Russian doll where you open the large one and there's a different one inside that, and then there's a different one inside that, and then there's a different one inside that. That's what this evening felt like to me. It was like every time I turned a corner, I was blindsided by something.
Yeah. Yeah, you do not see anything that happens coming.
Absolutely. And I, particularly for me, Mike, the reason this show works is because of the cast.
2 reasons, in my opinion. The cast and not knowing.
True.
Going in knowing nothing will make this show that much better.
Yes, absolutely. In the second act, there are some performance moments that are astoundingly subtle and devastating and shocking and funny, and it sets up the rest of the show perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to the first act where you have a very sincere moment with one of the artists. So all I can say is this, I got something from this show where I walked away going, I have never seen anything quite like this.
Agreed. Yeah, there's a lot of wall breaking.
Yeah. It's fascinating. It is fascinating to witness.
And one of the other things I wanted to mention, people that listen to this podcast, a lot of you love immersive theater. This is being billed as immersive theater, but it's not the immersive theater where you will be talking to a character or where you can make decisions. It's more immersive as in, if you remember us talking about To the Wilderness the day shall declare it. It's like that, where they at points will move around you and things like that, but it's not, you will not be changing the story in any way.
True.
But if you were a fan of just good theater, that's not theater, but it is.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a proscenium show so
No.
much. At times it feels like it, but it's really not. It's just so good. It's so well done.
And at times incredibly funny, and at times incredibly moving and thought-provoking.
And it really will make you think. It will
yeah.
I left there wondering who you are, Russell.
Oh, I understand.
You know?
Yeah, I understand.
So yeah, so to everyone listening, we're sorry we're being super, super vague, but trust us. If you see this show, you will understand. And this first started in New York, right, Russell? And they won an Obie Award?
The play was done as, I believe, a standard proscenium play and is an Obie Award-winning play.
And what does that mean for us non-theater people?
It's one of the prestigious New York Theater Awards.
Okay. So it means a lot.
So it's significant,
Okay.
definitely.
So right there, I mean, you know it's going to be good, I guess.
So or somebody who thought it was good. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this piece and recommend to anyone interested in provocative theater and immersive theater both.
Yeah. And seriously, do not look for spoilers. Do not ask your friend, how was it? Do not ask anything that happened, because it will ruin your experience. Trust us. And for more information to apply for tickets, because you have to apply and they have to approve you, because you'll understand. Go to thinktank.gallery on Facebook, Think Tank Gallery, Instagram and Twitter, Think Tank DTLA. This is also put on in association with Firefly Theater. And you can find them on the web at Firefly Inc. On Facebook, Firefly Theater Films, and that's TER in theater. And on Twitter, Firefly Inc. And also the Xiong Collective. That's the XIONG.CN. So we'll have all those links in the show notes as well. And speaking of theater, Russell, you went to one of the staples that you never miss during October, Wicked Lit.
So actually, it's becoming now the tradition is November, because they are God Bless Unbound Productions and Wicked Lit, because they always run into November. And it's become a tradition for me to get together with some friends and see them at Wicked Lit in November. I went the other night. Wicked Lit is unique in the fact that it's site-specific theater where the plays happen, and there are multiple plays. There are 3 plays with a wraparound story, which is sort of the connecting tissue of the evening. So this year, as for the last few years, it was at the Mountain View Mausoleum and Cemetery in Altadena, California. And the plays this year covered everything from Egyptian curses to very, very odd, restless spirit stories. And once again, this is just a wonderful, wonderful night. This is a night that takes almost 3 hours to unfold. So the key to Wicked Lit is always dress warmly if you're going later in the run, because it got really, really chilly, and wear comfortable shoes. Now, I began with Thoth's Labyrinth, which was an exploration of an Egyptian curse. And Mike, this was interesting because Wicked Lit is experimenting a little bit more with their format. And we actually broke up into 3 different groups, our little group of audience members, where we were each followed 2 different characters. And then at the end of that show, you find out how all of those characters relate to one another. So that was a little fascinating, and a little bit of an immersive thing that I have not seen Wicked Lit do quite this extensively before. So if you go back a second time, you could have explored a slightly different path during that show, which is really interesting. And also The Open Door, which was a very, very creepy, haunting story of a child who senses a spirit nearby and becomes ill, and the father and mother, against unbelievable protests from the local town and the logical people who don't believe in ghosts, go ghost investigating themselves and find out that some spirits are real, and they get to the bottom of what might be making their son ill. So that was a fascinating story. And my favorite of the evening is The Damned Thing, which this was a wonderful, wonderful, intense story of a man who discovered an evil.
Can I make a bad joke?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Wouldn't it be water?
What do you mean?
The damned thing?
Wouldn't it be water?
Yeah.
The damned thing.
The damned thing is water.
I have no idea what you're saying.
Because when you have a dam, it's for water. So the damned thing is water. Yep. We're almost at the end of this podcast.
Wow. You actually had to explain that joke to me.
That's not the first one.
Just saying. Somebody said recently jokes are supposed to be funny. I think somebody said that to me recently.
Oh, that's hilarious. There are people laughing right now.
Yeah,
because
right.
they're like, oh my God, that's so clever.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And if you did laugh at that, please tweet us. Hashtag I laughed.
no. Nobody's tweeting us.
Or hashtag...
Nobody's hashtagging.
Or hashtag Mike's jokes are dumb.
So, The Damned Thing was a really intense kind of ghost story, even though the evil may not necessarily be a ghost in this particular story.
Because it's water?
It's not water. It's not haunted water. So, really clever staging. For those of you who don't know Wicked Lit, it takes place inside a mausoleum. And you actually, during the course of this particular portion of the show, you went into an actual cemetery and they staged portions of the show in a cemetery. And here's the cool thing, Mike. When the evil presents itself and has to be dealt with, the way they staged it, and I don't want to give all of their secrets away, but let's just say that if you're outdoors in a cemetery and there's evil approaching you, the trees would reflect that. The trees moved.
Oh, cool.
They actually you saw it. The way it's lit, you actually saw the different branches move.
Was it lit wickedly?
Yes, it was.
Wow. Yeah, you can tell it's near the end.
So, that was my favorite sequence overall, and the wraparound was called Lilium, which was sort of a purgatory type area where when you found out, when you arrived, you found out that you, the audience, had recently died. And the whole course of the evening was you were waiting for the chance to go through the gates to go to heaven or hell. And the way that they were entertaining themselves while they were waiting there, the people who were there before us, they were telling these stories as reliving some misery that you could relate to or reflect on or be entertained by. So I gotta say, I got asked, because, you know, if you're a patron and you're here at Lilium, you're obviously deceased. So one of the characters walked up to me and said, "So if you don't mind me inquiring, may I ask about your passing?" Can you guess what my answer was?
There could be so many ways.
So I looked him in the eye and went, "Cannibals."
Why would I have guessed that? I was thinking real life stuff, like with all the hospital stuff and like, or an extreme haunt, like, oh,
No.
the extreme haunt left the
Cannibals.
bag on too long.
Cannibals. So the actor actually really reacted so well. His eyes got wide and he was like, "Oh my." I said, "Yeah, it was a rough night." And he said, "May I ask how?" And so I said, "Well, I was on this adventure." And he was like, "So this was your vacation?" I said, "Well, yeah, it's not my day job." It's like, "Wait, so you died from cannibals on your vacation? That's horrible." We had fun. We were having a good time.
Cannibals are always fun.
So, anyway, so Wicked Lit, once again, well worth spending time there. Unbound Productions, I want to highlight something about some people don't realize about Wicked Lit is they actually do productions throughout the year, Mike. Sometimes they've been at horror conventions that we've gone to. They have done something called History Lit or Mystery Lit at various times during the year. So you should definitely check them out. Find out what they're doing. Give these guys a chance at some point if you've never attended one of their shows. They do something, again, like we were talking about Shine On earlier. Nobody does what Wicked Lit does like Wicked Lit does it. And it's so cool. It's so unique. Their location, which they've been for the last several years in the mausoleum, works so well for them. It's such a creepy atmosphere. And not immersive necessarily in much interaction, Mike, but it's immersive in the environment. And you walk through and you see these plays unfold. You and I both have seen other productions at this location, and it's such a great location. And the shows this year were universally strong. My personal favorite was The Damned Thing, just because it was so creepy.
And wet.
Okay. Moving on. So if you want more information on Wicked Lit, you can go to unboundproductions.org, look up Wicked Lit on Facebook, and on Instagram, it's Unbound Productions. On Twitter, it's Unbound Prod LA. And I think, Mike, that basically wraps up sort of the end of our Halloween.
Yeah, we has a sad.
I understand. I can relate to your sad. But it's nice that, the home haunt scene in this area in particular is so cool and so vibrant.
Well, not only that, it's definitely bleeding over into the immersive theater scene. Like, how many shows have we seen in the past year that have happened at private residences?
That's very true.
Throughout the year.
Yes. The last few days of the haunt season definitely were kind of a whirlwind of catching up on different variety types of shows, and that's kind of the blessing of living in Southern California is you do have opportunity to see a wide variety of shows. At the beginning of the haunt season, Mike, we were kind of talking about it was sad that Delusion wasn't running this year, and the only new big immersive thing was the Creep Lore show. But still, even though I don't think there was anything,
And no extreme haunts.
no extreme haunts.
I mean, I don't know if I know Heretic did like a thing.
I think Heretic was in another city. So yeah, nothing made a big splash. Nothing. So it was sort of a weird year in the fact that usually like something new hits the scene, and nothing like that happened this year. But still, I thought it was a good, solid season. I'm glad I was able to go to Vegas twice. We did Fright Dome there, and we also did the Freakling Brothers. So. It was definitely a good, solid season. I'm hoping next year brings even more variety.
Yeah, and hopefully, and that's what I'm worried about because a lot of this year, because of we're still feeling the ghost ship fire in Oakland.
Yes, I think
so
too.
like with LA and their permitting and they're cracking down on that.
Locations are tough.
Yeah, and I just hope it gets better. And I know like Noah and Leia, that team are working to change that and to have it be more accessible for people and easier for people to get permits in this city. So, fingers crossed for them. And
hopefully that'll help the haunt scene next year.
Mm-hmm.
Really quick, I do have a couple of shout outs, Mike. Last podcast, I had talked about going to Vegas at Freakling Brothers and people I'd run into there. And you know what? I listed everybody. I left out a couple people, and I just want to make that right. So Morgan and Megan, we got distracted about the whole, romper room and the magic mirror and all of that. So nothing personal. Morgan and Megan, it was good to run into you ever so briefly. I barely saw them, Mike, when I was in Vegas, but I definitely want to say hi to them. And also, somebody came over from England.
Yeah, Morgan.
Not Morgan. Vicky, our friend Vicky, who she met us when we saw Caught down at Think Tank Gallery, and Mike, this is what she gave me.
Nice. Because you always hurt yourself?
So very funny.
Well, explain what it is.
Vicky gave me a first aid kit, except it was filled with various forms of Kit Kat, which you cannot easily find in this country. So, and she gave me a tag that this was for medicinal purposes. So, and it has like the dark chocolate Kit Kat and the cookie dough Kit Kat and the extra milk and cocoa Kit Kat and the peanut butter Kit Kat bites, and yeah, so
Nice.
yeah, that was very, very kind. Thank you so much, Vicky. Really, really appreciate it.
And I just want to give a shout out to Andrea and Tom. They are huge supporters of My Haunt Life and just great people. And they started their own podcast. And I'm going to assume it's just because of us, because we're so awesome and we inspire people to want to do their own thing, even though it probably has nothing to do with us at all. I'm just going to think that.
This is the way Mike thinks.
Andrea and Tom have a new podcast called The Other Castle, where they go through the stories and plots of old video games that you may not have thought had storylines.
That's actually interesting.
Yeah,
That's
it is.
Cool.
Yeah.
Even from me, who's not a big gamer person, that kind of actually sounds cool to me.
And the fun thing is like they've like done mostly like 80s and 90s games. So it's not like, you know, the game that came out last week, because nowadays games are movies,
right?
You know, so, but yeah, it's fun and they're really funny and like they're pretty newly married and you can tell they're still in love and all that crap. But yeah,
wow.
It's cool.
Cynical Mike.
No, it's awesome. It's just jealousy.
Okay.
But yeah, so check them out. Check The Other Castle out on iTunes if you're into games and funny hosts.
Cool. So does that wrap it up?
That better wrap that gavel up, B. Yep, that's it. For more information on us, you can find us on the web at myhauntlife.com and all the social media at myhauntlife. You can email us at mike@myhauntlife.com with 2 S's and 2 L's, or russell@myhauntlife.com with MIKE. And you can leave us a text or a voicemail on the Haunt line, 515-HAUNT-LA. And that's it for now.
So I'm Russell.
I'm Mike.
See ya.
Later.
Get out. We're done for now.
For to keep an eye on Shine. Here's what? Let's try that again, where I don't offer any specific detail whatsoever.
2 in a row.
Okay. Okay.
Do you just want to do that whole part again?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.